Think about it. You flick a switch, the lights come on, you plug in your phone, it charges.
Yeah.
We barely give it a second thought, do we? But powering all of that in Sri Lanka, well, it's this massive interconnected network. It's working tirelessly behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're doing a deep dive into that vital system, Sri Lanka's electricity grid.
Exactly. It really is the unseen engine of, modern Sri Lankan life. Our goal today is to understand not just what it is, but how it actually operates day to day.
Okay.
What are its current strengths, its weaknesses, and crucially, what needs to happen for it to meet future demands. Especially thinking about economic growth and, the increasing impact of climate change.
And Sri Lanka's power doesn't just come from one single place, does it? It sounds like quite a mix.
It is, yeah. It's quite a mix, and we're going to unpack that.
Right.
If you look back historically, the story of electricity here is largely about harnessing water power.
Hydropower.
Dams. Yes. The island's geography, with the highlands, the river systems, it was just ideal for it. Iconic projects like Victoria, Randanigala, Upper Cottonmale, these were the backbone of the supply for a very long time.
Yeah, people definitely know those names. They're landmarks. But relying just on hydro, that has its limitations, doesn't it? It's all tied to the monsoons, the rain.
Precisely. Hydropower is, inherently vulnerable to those seasonal rainfall patterns. And critically, to drought. So this variability meant Sri Lanka couldn't depend on it exclusively. Not for a completely stable supply anyway.
So what bridged the gap?
To bridge that gap, thermal power stations became essential. Now, these plants primarily use imported fossil fuels, mostly coal and diesel.
Okay.
The Nor Kolai power plant, which people also know as Lakavijaya, that's a major contributor on the thermal side.
Which then brings in a whole different set of challenges, I imagine. We're talking environmental impact, burning fossil fuels.
Yes.
And also the cost, right? Importing all that fuel. That must put a strain on the country's foreign exchange. You probably even see some of that reflected in your own electricity bill.
Absolutely. Those are really significant issues, and they need serious attention. Fortunately, the energy landscape is evolving. There's a growing push towards renewables.
All right.
Which is a very encouraging sign, actually. Solar and wind power are becoming increasingly important parts of the energy mix.
Right.
We're seeing projects developing in places like Hambantota, Poonarin, Mannar. These are really important steps towards a cleaner, maybe more energy-independent future for Sri Lanka.
Yeah, given the sunshine we get and those coastal winds, it does seem like a natural fit. What about nuclear power? Is that on the table at all?
Currently, no. Nuclear power isn't part of Sri Lanka's energy strategy. It's mainly due to, understandable safety concerns plus geopolitical factors.
I see.
These things involve complex international agreements, big technological considerations.
Yeah.
It just makes large-scale nuclear projects quite challenging to pursue right now.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got this diverse set of sources, hydro, thermal, growing renewables feeding into the system.
Right.
How does all that electricity actually get from, say, a dam or a solar farm to our homes and businesses across the island? That's where the national grid comes in, right?
Yes, exactly. The Ceylon Electricity Board, the CEB, they're the crucial organization here. They manage this national grid.
Okay.
Think of it like a giant network of roads, but for electricity. Their main job, their primary role, is constantly balancing the amount of electricity being generated with the demand from everyone, everywhere on the island.
And that demand must fluctuate like crazy, right? Throughout the day, different seasons.
Oh, absolutely. Constantly. You've got those daily peaks, mornings and especially evenings when people are most active.
Yeah.
Then you have the bigger seasonal shifts, different energy needs, the hot, dry periods versus a monsoon season. And of course, a busy city like Colombo has very different usage patterns compared to, say, more rural areas.
Wow. So how do they manage that balancing act?
Well, one fascinating part is something called a reserve margin.
A reserve margin?
Yeah, it's like having spare capacity readily available extra power generation that can kick in really quickly.
Ah, okay. For unexpected surges, or if a plant goes down.
Exactly. Unexpected surges in demand, or if a power plant suddenly has a technical problem and goes offline.
Mm-hmm.
To provide this kind of flexibility, you need quick starting power plants.
Yeah.
Often these are diesel generators.
Right.
They can be brought online very rapidly when needed to stabilize the whole system, even if, they are more expensive to run in the long term.
Got it. So the power is generated, it goes into this national grid managed by the CEB. Then it needs to move around the island. That's where we see those big transmission lines, right? The ones on the huge towers.
Yep. Those high voltage transmission lines. We see them overhead mostly, but increasingly in some urban areas, they're going underground too.
And why high voltage?
That high voltage is key for efficiency. It lets you move large amounts of electricity over distances with less energy loss along the way. Think of it like water flowing more easily through a wider pipe.
Okay.
Now, Sri Lanka's relatively small size helps. We don't face the kind of extreme long-distance transmission challenges you see in, say, India or China.
But reliability is still an issue. Storms and things.
Oh, absolutely. Ensuring the reliability of these lines, especially against severe weather like storms or even just system failures, that remains a constant concern. Things can still go wrong.
Okay, so the power travels along these high voltage lines. Then, once it reaches a local area, the voltage needs to come down, right? Before it's safe for us to use in our homes or schools.
Yep, precisely. That's the job of the distribution network. It's like the smaller roads branching off the main highway.
I like that analogy.
From the main grid substations, the electricity enters this distribution network. Transformers step down the voltage to the levels we use every day, 230 volts typically.
And that final bit, getting it to the actual house or shop.
That final stretch, people often call it the last mile. And it's really critical. In many rural parts of Sri Lanka, there's still a definite need for upgrades to this last mile infrastructure.
Why is that?
To ensure a consistent, reliable power supply. And importantly, to reduce those frustrating power outages that, can still happen more often than we'd like in some areas.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You can generate all the power you need, but if you can't get it reliably to people, it doesn't solve the problem. Now, thinking about how we actually use electricity here, are there any interesting patterns in our consumption? Let's zoom in on that daily use.
Yes, there definitely are some noticeable patterns. As we kind of touched on, urban areas tend to see really significant spikes in electricity use during the evening.
Right. Everyone gets home from work, turns on lights, TV, maybe AC.
Exactly. Lights on, appliances running, air conditioning often gets cranked up, especially during harder periods. In contrast, electricity demand in rural areas tends to be a bit more consistent throughout the day. Although it's important to note it is steadily increasing as more communities get better access to reliable power.
Okay.
So the challenge for the grid operators, for the CEB, is to efficiently and, cost effectively meet these very diverse and constantly fluctuating demands across the whole country.
So despite all these complexities generating the power, balancing supply, getting it everywhere, what are the main upsides for Sri Lanka of having this single interconnected national grid?
Oh, the advantages are really significant. First and foremost, it provides a crucial level of reliability.
How so?
Well, if there's a power cut in one specific region, maybe due to a local fault, or if a particular power plant has a technical issue, the grid's interconnected nature allows electricity to be rerouted.
Ah, like a detour. Exactly. Rerouted from other sources, which minimizes the disruption for homes and businesses. It prevents localized problems from becoming widespread blackouts most of the time.
Okay, that's a big one. What else?
Secondly, flexibility. We talked about renewable energy.
Right. Solar in the north, maybe wind elsewhere.
Precisely. Power generated in areas with lots of sunshine or strong winds, like the north and northwest, can be efficiently transmitted to high-demand centers like Colombo or Kandy. This geographical diversity in where we generate power becomes truly valuable Because we have a national grid to move it around.
And what about the economic side? Does the grid play a role there beyond just powering businesses?
It does. The involvement of what are called independent power producers, or IPPs.
So private companies generating power.
Yes, companies that generate electricity and then sell it onto the grid. Their involvement introduces a degree of competition. And competition, generally, can help keep costs down.
That makes sense. Looking ahead, the potential for well-designed and crucially transparent energy auctions could further help manage or even reduce costs for consumers.
Transparency seems key there.
It really is. You need transparency to promote fair practices and get the best outcomes for everyone. While IPPs bring competition, you also need good regulation to make sure everything integrates smoothly and the supply remains reliable.
Okay. So when we look to the future then, what's the next evolution for Sri Lanka's grid? We hear a lot about smart grids and, of course, that urgent need for cleaner energy.
The future is definitely about making the grid smarter, much more resilient, and significantly cleaner. There's no way around that. Smart investments and, forward-thinking policies are absolutely essential.
Like what kind of technologies?
Well, battery storage technology, for example. That's going to become increasingly important.
For storing renewable energy.
Exactly. For smoothing out those natural ups and downs of solar and wind. When the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing, energy stored in batteries can be fed back into the grid. It ensures a much more consistent supply.
That makes perfect sense, like a backup system built in. And you mentioned smart grids. What does that actually involve? What makes a grid smart?
A central piece of the smart grid puzzle is something called Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI.
Smart meters.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Smart meters. These offer a whole host of benefits. More accurate billing for you, the consumer. For one.
Wow. Okay.
Also, the ability for the utility, the CEB, to remotely detect and potentially reduce electricity theft. And the potential to optimize energy usage patterns based on real-time data.
How would that work?
It could lead to greater efficiency, less energy waste across the whole system, maybe even allowing for different electricity rates at different times of the day, cheaper power when demand is low, for instance.
Interesting. We've also seen a big push for rooftop solar, haven't we? The Surya Bala Sangramaya initiative. How does that fit into the bigger picture?
That's been a really positive development, the enthusiastic adoption of rooftop solar. Continued support for this kind of distributed generation power generated close to where it's used offers several real advantages.
Such as?
Well, it reduces the amount of electricity lost during transmission because the power doesn't have to travel as far.
Right, less loss on the lines.
It increases energy independence, both for individual households and collectively for the country. And of course, it can lead to significant cost savings for the people who install the panels.
So it empowers people to become producers, too.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It's a big shift, empowering consumers to also be energy producers. Very important.
And finally, it seems like there's something we can all do, right? Just being more mindful of how much energy we use every day.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Energy efficiency is, it's a vital piece of a sustainable energy future. It's not just about generating more clean power, it's also about using less power overall.
So better appliances.
Yeah.
Smarter building design.
Exactly. Choosing more energy efficient appliances when you buy them. Adopting building designs that naturally minimize the need for heating, cooling, and lighting. And just raising public awareness about why energy conservation matters.
Makes sense.
If we can collectively lower our national energy demand, even by a bit, it significantly reduces the strain on the grid and lowers overall costs. And often you can do it without really impacting your quality of life.
So it's really clear that Sri Lanka's electricity grid is so much more than just, wires and power stations hanging off poles.
Definitely.
It's this constantly evolving, incredibly complex, and utterly important system that, underpins nearly everything we do in modern life.
It truly is the backbone of modern Sri Lankan society. And as the country keeps developing, And as we face these growing challenges from climate change, the need for this grid to become cleaner, smarter, and even more reliable.
Yeah.
It's absolutely essential. There's no question.
It really sounds like powering Sri Lanka's future sustainably and doing it with confidence is going to require, well, ongoing investment, lots of innovation, and probably a collaborative effort from everyone, policymakers, engineers, businesses, and each of us in our own homes.
Yes, right.
It definitely gives you a whole new perspective on that simple act of just flipping a switch, doesn't it?
It certainly does.